Every year, I talk about it, there are guys that everybody seems to be in love with, and I'm not, as a prospect. And I don't get it, I don't see it, I don't understand it, and it is what it is. And sometimes I'll be right, sometimes I'll be wrong. These other people, sometimes they'll be right, and sometimes they'll be wrong too. But I always go into it, and especially as I've seen people praising a player and really pumping them up, I look at him and I say, my goodness, this dude's going to be a lot of fun for me to watch on film. I'm going to have an incredibly high grade on him, and then I start watching and all that crap doesn't happen. And one of those guys this year is Maurice Hurst from Michigan. Oh, here comes the Go Blue Army. They're going to flame away at me in the comments section. Fine, whatever. Not saying the dude's a buster. I'm not saying the dude can't play. But the second coming of Aaron Donald, he is not. And I do want to point out something. I saw a couple of people talking about this on Twitter, and I'm glad they said it. I understand that Aaron Donald is kind of your prototype when you're talking about a 3 technique, or probably a 5 technique too, because whatever technique on the defensive line, Aaron Donald can do it. But Aaron Donald is the prototype. He is the gold standard. He is that damn ridiculously good. He's going to have a gold jacket someday unless he gets hit by a bus. And even then, he probably still sacks the damn bus. We got to stop comparing every interior lineman to Aaron Donald. How'd that work out with a guy like Sheldon Rankins? Just saying. But Hurst has some really good attributes to him. And I can see why the analytics folks like Pro Football Focus are really, really high on him, especially when it comes to their grading. He was an incredibly productive interior lineman at Michigan. There's no disputing that. He generated a ton of interior pressure, and he made a decent number of run stops for a guy who primarily was an upfield gap-penetrating 3 technique. So I get it. But again, it's not always just about the raw production in the in the college level that dictates whether or not the guy has that success translate to the NFL. And that's kind of the bucket that Hurst falls into with me. Now, I love his initial burst and explosiveness. He's got phenomenal burst off of the line. Like, there are times you watch a Michigan game, and Hurst ends the play as soon as it starts, because he's just shot the gap. I mean, and you'll see it game after game after game. The dude has great anticipation of the snap. He's got an explosive first and second step. He can get to the backfield in a hurry. He absolutely can. And that really manifests in his pass rush ability. That explosive first step to be able to beat blockers and shoot the gaps. He pairs that with a spin move that when he uses it can be absolutely lethal. I mean, you talk about a dude with that type of first step, and then you can counter that with a spin move. Those interior linemen, even in the NFL, good night. He's got decent flexibility and bend to him to where he can dip the shoulder to get lower than the blocker and kind of get that interior edge, if that's what you want to call it. And because of that burst and powerful explosiveness, he shows me some bull rush ability when he gets his hands and his arms used. I mean, he can drive some people back, which when you're talking about a defensive lineman who one of his knocks is going to be his lack of pure size on the interior, it's impressive. He's got a nice up and under move that works well on twists and stunts. Like, he's a pretty well-refined pass rusher. And to me, day one in the NFL, he should be able to contribute as an interior, one-gap penetrating, 3 technique type of defensive tackle. He absolutely should be able to. He plays hard. You got to like that. But there are other areas of concern for me. Like, that's why I say he won't be a bust. I'm pretty sure he won't be a bust, is because of that explosive first step, his ability to shoot the gap, and how refined he is as a pass rusher. If nothing else, he will be a pass rush specialist in the NFL and probably generate somewhere like 8 to 9 sacks on the interior. He's going to be a good NFL player. I just see all these people grading him as a top 5 and a top 10 prospect, and I feel like we've got to pump the brakes just a little bit. Because he does not play that strong. He does not. And you especially see this in the running game. He really has trouble holding his ground in the run game. He really struggles with anchoring. He really, really does. He plays stronger to me as a pass rusher than as a run defender because that's where that explosive quickness and burst can come at somebody, get them off balance, and he can get into them. But as a run defender, it doesn't manifest that way so much. And that lack of size and pure power, to me, really impacts his ability to hold up. Like, yes, at times in the running game, he could make stops because he shot the gap, and then there will be other times he could chase plays down and pursue. But that also glosses over the fact that a lot of times when he doesn't get to win with that initial athleticism, he can get pushed back, he can get walled off, he can get pancaked. He can be taken completely out of the equation. He can get himself into bad situations in terms of trying to shoot the gap, and as a result, he gets out of position and the play goes right where he was. So even though he had all these run stops in 2017 as a run defender, to me that doesn't necessarily automatically translate to the NFL in terms of expecting him to be able to consistently stuff the run. There is upside. There is plenty of room to grow and work with and for him to get better. And if he does, watch out. But we have to go based off of what he is. I mean, another thing I don't like about him is when we talk about maintaining leverage, he drops his head too low. He can get off balance. He actually can get off balance more than you would really like, so he can get pushed around a little bit. He can get knocked to the ground more than you really want. And sure, some of that is a product of being under 300 pounds and not being the strongest guy. But sometimes that just comes from he drops his head too damn low. And he really needs to use his arms and his hands better. Because to me, I saw a guy a lot who had a really bad tendency to dip into a blocker with his shoulder. You want to be able to see this guy chicken fight with his hands and be able to redirect and shed with his hand. And there were a lot of times, even when he would fire off the line, the first thing he's doing is he's leaning his shoulder in. And sometimes that works, but that's not always going to work. And I got news for him. You get to the NFL, those interior linemen are going to be bigger. They're going to be stronger than the boys that you faced in college. And as a result, that crap's not going to work. That crap's going to have to change. You're talking about a guy that gets too far out in front of himself. His center of gravity can get off. Then you're talking about dropping his head and leaning his shoulder in too much. I mean, it scares me for him because there could be times where he makes the explosive pop plays, but there could also be times that he would be a real liability because he could get completely swamped and engulfed and taken out of the equation. So no, I'm not quite as high on Maurice Hurst as a lot of other people are. I don't feel like he's an instinctual football player like some other linemen that we'll see in this draft class. Then you talk about the heart condition thing. I'm so glad that the recheck said that he was free and clear, and we're just talking about it's an irregular EKG, and that's what caused the issue. But it's still something to be concerned about. But I'm glad for him that it's not an issue, at least for the time being. So where do I ultimately feel that he is? You're going to look at the raw grade that I have on him, and the simple truth is the raw grade doesn't fully reflect what I think of him as a prospect. Because I do like him. I'm just not quite as nuclear hot on him as a lot of other people are. To me, I feel like he has a chance to be taken in the first 32 picks of this draft, and probably should be. Because of his sheer ability to rush the passer. But I'm concerned about him being able to play anything other than in a 4-3 as a 3 technique. I don't see him being strong enough or refined enough or good enough against the run to be playing as a 5 technique. And you're absolutely not going to play him as a nose in either a 4-3 or a 3-4. And I wonder initially how well he's really going to be able to hold up against the run. As a rookie, his primary job might be to generate some pass rush as an interior defender in kind of a rotational situation, which to me would be absolutely perfect for a team like a Jacksonville, a team like a Minnesota, a team like a New England. You know, those teams picking right there late in round 1, if you even want to bump up a little bit, a team like New Orleans at 27. All these teams that run base 4-3, they could all utilize a role-playing type of situational interior pass rusher right now, and then you worry about developing the rest of that stuff later. So to me, if he falls into round 2, it has to be about concerns with the heart situation or teams are really, really concerned about the lack of scheme versatility and whether or not he could truly defend the run. To me, his pass rush ability, even though I kind of have him on the outskirts and he's like a late round 1, early round 2 type of guy, in terms of the draft, in terms of the team sitting at the end of the draft, to me, he is a guy that it would be kind of criminal if he wasn't a first-round pick. And I do feel like he's a top 32 player in this draft. He should be a first-round pick. And if he's not, there's something wrong here because somebody doesn't get it. Okay? So, no, I don't think he's a top 5 or top 10 talent. You don't like that? It's too bad. It's my opinion. But I think he's got immediate impact ability as an interior rusher.